Welcome back to So What, Who Cares? This is episode 5, part 2. If you have not listened to part 1, you're going to want to go back and listen to that before getting into this episode. If you've already listened, welcome back and enjoy the show. So I don't usually feel the urge to fight in stressful situations. Not usually. I think it depends on the situation.
Okay.
Obviously, I think that's obvious. Just recently I was confronted with a situation that put me in a more fight situation or than I feel like I've been in a very long time, possibly ever. Again, I don't really want to get into details because it's still pretty raw.
Yeah.
And it's honestly kind of difficult for me to talk about because it is I will get emotional and probably feel some anger coming up in this, but it hit me in this fight response and basically I found out that someone that I used to be very, very close with, like brother close, right, so over the past several years, he's shown himself to be what I would consider a dangerous person, and dangerous to himself, to me, to others around him, to society, to mostly to himself and those very close to him. That's from a laundry list of things over the years. Someone I love very much. I had to put distance between us. This is just to give some backstory here. Because I was so emotionally invested in him and his well-being, and he wasn't. His decisions, his lifestyle had become very, very not good, and it was taking a toll on me. And I didn't want that, so my heart was breaking for him, but at the same time, I needed to put distance there. I found out very recently that he was secretly sort of nurturing a relationship with someone in my very close inner circle, like a romantic relationship, and I didn't know. Intentions from either person aside, none of that mattered because I saw red when I found out. I have no doubt that if he had physically been in front of me, I would have reacted in a fight response, because my first reaction was to dial the phone and to absolutely lose my ever-loving mind. I don't know if people know this, but I've had a wrist surgery and I've had issues with my wrist for the last couple of years, and I went and I did more damage to my wrist down in the basement, hitting my heavy bag, and I spent the next hour and a half to 2 hours in a tense state pacing around my basement. And that was before I could even go upstairs. Now, so I'm not necessarily proud of how I responded. Now, I don't feel like I said anything that didn't or shouldn't have been said, but I don't like the feeling of having lost control. That didn't feel good afterwards, the regret and the shame that you were talking about. Now, again, I don't regret having said the things and being very clear about how I felt about the situation. That's not what I mean. But I don't like that side, that to see that come to light. I don't see that very often. And then also the knowing that my family was in the house, hearing me yell, hearing me hit the bag, hearing me, or knowing that I wasn't okay, and that puts them in a certain, so there's some more shame, some more guilt, and it just wasn't a good, I'm pretty sure I had a fever. It's one of those things that, so I don't feel that very often. It's hard for me to say that I wish that I could have controlled that, because what I'm hearing is that I can't in some regards.
Well, we can learn how to respond, but I think that you set a boundary with this person. And I'm just curious, this is where anger really is beneficial and works really well with us. And maybe because of being new to it on this level, Maybe you don't have the nuance of that yet, but I also think it sounds like you set a boundary, and that's a really important thing to do. And it sounds like you're advocating for yourself and for the people you love. And that's an important thing to do. So we can look back and say, well, it happened like I flipped my lid, so I didn't have agency. And I don't like that. And there was a gift of having it.
Yeah.
And the gift was that I got really clear on how close this person can get to the people I love and what's okay and not okay. And I let them know. It's also really healthy to go punch a bag. Now, because you had a wrist surgery, probably not the best
I wish
choice,
I hadn't
right?
done that, but
Yeah. But you weren't punching walls. The kids weren't scared. Your wife wasn't scared. They were probably like, for you and your pain and your hurting, but no one was in danger. Right? So in that way, that is a metabolizing of anger. And it's a safe, smart thing to do. Then we have to learn how, when it comes up again, because I'm sure that happened and then you didn't like, well, that's done. No, instead, we start to think about it. We start to think, well, I wish I had acted differently. Okay, then let's practice being with anger. Let's practice holding what that means, that this thing happened, and the feelings and the sensations, and can I still wiggle my toes, and can I ask what it wants to do, which I would imagine it would say, well, I want to protect you.
In the moment, I think it said, I want to kill.
Yeah,
Which
but
I'm glad that
why?
wasn't an
Not for
option.
pleasure.
No, of course not.
No.
Yeah.
So, what gets attached to nervous system responses is shame. And guilt. So the thing happened where the anger came, and it's more complex than I should have just done it better and responded like, a Tibetan nun. Like,
I guess I don't, when you say that, it's like, I don't know what response I would have preferred.
Yeah.
Because I really didn't do anything that wasn't values consistent, that it wasn't, I didn't take it out on my wife. I didn't, destroy something that wasn't intended, besides maybe my tendons and my wrist, which, is what it is, but that was unintentional.
I'm kind of curious too, like, how much do we need to feel, sense, and pop our lid off, to set those kind of boundaries that needed to be set.
Right.
To have a hard conversation that needed to be had. Because if you had that much to say to him in that moment, all of that had been building inside and probably needed to come out at some point. So when we say, are we in right relationship with anger? That means like, okay, this man has crossed my boundaries and my family boundaries many, many times. And a conversation needs to be had that's a little bit more clear. But if we're not culture taught, if it's not hardwired in us how to do that, then it sometimes takes anger. And it maybe sometime when I'm working with people and myself, when it starts to rise, I learn how to sit down and be with it. But not always.
Yeah.
Not always. And sometimes you will, and sometimes you don't. But it takes practice. It does take practice to be with these sensations, this felt sense of fight, flight.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what you've said several times, and that I know is a big part of your belief system and your teaching is learning how to have these feelings with compassion for yourself, and that's I think what I am realizing now that I need to have is that there was using that situation there was no more appropriate response necessarily. It was, and that's not to try to make excuses for myself, but there really wasn't anything.
I would leave that part out.
Yeah.
You're not making excuses.
Yeah.
There was nothing you could have done different.
Yeah. Truthfully, if I had responded any differently, it would probably have been a result that wasn't what needed to happen, being that like you said, that boundary may have not been made clear. I may have felt more shame or guilt because I didn't respond in a way that got those things said.
Yeah.
I'm just and I think you said it well. I'm not well versed in the fight response. That's not usually my knee jerk. So it was an odd feeling. It was a new one. Not new, not the first time, but an unfamiliar one.
So next time, don't do punch a bag, but just use the hand that's not hurt.
Yeah.
And
they're both hurt. That's the problem.
Oh man, you're gonna have to pick up like kickboxing.
Yeah, I should have kicked.
You just kicked, right? Go for a run. Maybe there's something a little friendlier for your wrist.
Yeah.
And
I felt like a beating needed to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Use those feet.
Yeah.
But it is just this human condition is what we're talking about. And we're going to have moments in time and that sensation rising in us. What's curious, in that moment, you could take action and set these boundaries and go do something of action that is healthy, punching a bag. Sometimes we're on social media and we read something and we have that same response and we don't know what to do. We can't pick up and be like, I'm setting a boundary with you and what you're doing right now, because that line's not available to us.
Yeah, I don't know the White House's phone number.
That's right. But there are actions we can take. There are things we can do. And there is a sense of like, motoring it out. Sometimes we need to motor it out, and then
just doing something to get the energy out.
Yeah. If it's jumping jacks, if it's whatever it is, some movement, dancing. Dancing is a great one.
Freeze dancing.
I would just dance.
Just dancing.
Just dance and dance and dance.
Okay.
Improvisational movement where you're using creativity, coloring, drawing, like anything that's engaging the right side of the brain or movement, working out. These kind of things do help. And we have to learn how to be with that sensation in a way that is like loving kindness. That doesn't mean to the person that's crossing boundaries.
Sure.
But that means with myself. And so does the sensation or the emotional reaction with time can cause like physical illness? So we have to really go like, how long do I carry it? How do I work with it? How hard do I hold it?
So let's talk about befriending then.
Yeah.
What is that?
So befriending is, here's this difficult emotion. We're using anger, but fear, worry, these other emotions that are more difficult. If we could start to befriend them, meaning here they are. I'm not just, maybe I'm sensing it in my body. Maybe I'm just aware of it. And instead of, I don't like it, make it go away. We just say, tea and cake with demons, right? Let's have tea with it. I'm going to pour you some tea today. Worry, you're here visiting. I sense you. I can feel you churning in my belly. I know that you've got a story. And I'm just going to sit with you. And maybe you have something to share. And maybe I'll ask you to go ahead and leave. Right? Befriending doesn't mean they take up, they're star of the show. Yeah, right. We learn how to be with them, and then they dissolve.
No one's hard for me. I'm not gonna lie. Befriending. I know when we've worked before about befriending the pink anxiety monster that was in me, and showing compassion to it. That's hard for me. That's one I need to work on.
It's not an easy practice, but neither is just living with it free willy-nilly. The idea of we're just existing with it, as it, becoming it, that's not easy either.
Right, because we don't want to sit in discomfort. That sucks.
Yeah, we don't like the
No.
feeling of worry either. But the idea of like, I'll just fight it. I'll push it away. I'll repress it. I'll depress it. Depression. I'll let it run the show isn't the same either. That's not working. And so if we try on compassion practices, and research and science shows, but if we try them on and we start titration, like we talked about last time, little bits at a time, then with time, when they show up, we learn how to be in relationship with these emotions, feelings, sensations, and even some of the stories from a different place.
Okay, so what are some things then that when we're feeling these things, when we're trying to live,
and we've got the revving,
and we've got it, we're going, it's there, whether that's fear, whether that's anger. Anger's the one that is raw because we just talked about it for me, but like
panic, worry, fear, all of these.
What can we do? How do we work through those? Those?
So I've got a couple of things coming to mind, and I just had this thought of like, if we look at fight as argue and flight as avoid, right? So that we're clear that flight has that kind of energy of flight too, right?
You're not necessarily running physically away, but avoidance of the thing.
Avoidance, I think that's noteworthy or important to mention with flight energy, is that sometimes we'll say, oh, I'm a peaceful person, but we're just avoiding conflict. We're not engaging in the hard conversation. Is peace. Yeah, but avoidance doesn't feel peaceful. It has revving with it. Some repression, then some disdain comes. And so anyway, so what are some exercises to do with that? Okay. One is pushing on a wall and feeling your body turn on and saying something like, I am Lora. I am Lora, and you push on a wall. Another thing that I do often with clients, and if we're not really in an environment where I can walk this out fully in a very thespian way, but it is a little bit of a thespian experience. So we'll play along. Imagine that you or the person I'm working with is in an elevator. And
I'm already sweating. Just joking.
And I'm someone who's going to get in with you. But I'm like, the example I often use is like, I'm like a clown. I'm dressed like a clown and I'm dirty and I've got like boogers coming out of my face. I'm inebriated. I'm gross. I'm not someone you want to be in an elevator with. And in fact, if I get in the elevator with you, something bad's going to happen. So when I go to get in the elevator with you, as I walk towards you, I want you to say to me, back off. And so if we were standing up and we had that kind of room, we would practice this action back and forth. So as I'm getting closer to you, you say to me, back off. What typically happens when we start to role play like this is, and men and women across the board will be like, back off. Oh, and I can get like this close. And they're like, back off. There's a sense of like, again, it's this back off, taking up some space. That's one. And that one's kind of fun.
Telling someone to back off when you're backing away from them.
So as
doesn't get the point across the way that you're feeling like you want them to be able to, like you said, take up that space and
hold a boundary.
If I got to put my forehead on your forehead, that's what we're doing, because you're the one that needs to back off now.
Yeah, like I want your hand out. So eventually what happens is my person I'm working with is like pushing me back. But there's this other thing that happens is anxiety sort of rises in us, or that feeling, again, of that fight flight. It starts low and if we can feel it or sense it, it kind of starts to rise. And I'm not saying back off, but I'm saying when it starts to come, can I be with this? Can I be with this? That's not a 10. If you're at a 10 and and you flip your lid. That's way different. But I'm talking like, whoa, I can feel this thing rising in me. Enough. I'm going to wiggle my toes. I'm going to be with it differently, but I'm not going to let it consume me. I'm not going to let it get in the elevator with me.
Yeah. There's such a desired response in my mind for those feelings. Like, yeah, maybe I can live with it, but for how long? I want it gone. You know what I mean? Like those feelings, like I want to only feel the good things.
Oh, you mean not be a human?
Right.
Okay, so that's the next episode.
Okay.
It's impossible.
No, I know.
We're set.
But I guess when we talk about those things, the first thing that came to my head when you said, I feel it coming up and I'm giving it a how, can I be with this? The first thing that went through my head was, but for how long?
Right.
How long? How long do I have to before that thing goes down?
Maybe a second. Can I be with it for a couple seconds until it dissolves? Can I be with it a little longer? Oh, watch the storytelling. Oh, here it is. Oh, there it goes. Okay, nope. Now what's here? So
what happens when it doesn't want to go away?
Okay, so it's
That's
interesting.
probably another episode
Yeah,
in and of itself.
but it's true that there's this other thing that happens when we think we're like, I don't want to be with it. I don't like it. I just want to feel bliss. Then I'm going to push that away. And guess what? You're still with it. You're still touching it. It hasn't dissolved. It hasn't changed form and come back around. There's more gripping in the pushing away than learning to hold it like water.
You're still very much in that fight, in that conflict, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
In contact with.
Yeah, you're absolutely.
Right.
So how can what is this here? I can feel it. I can sense it. It's rising. I'm with it. Maybe I need to reach out to a friend. Maybe I need to meditate. Maybe I need to go for a run. It's not to make it go away like as much as it is to learn how to include it in everything, to be with it all.
Would it be fair to say, to not necessarily make it go away, but to not pay as much attention to it, not make it as much of a star of my show as it's trying to be at the moment?
It kind of depends. It depends because sometimes things need to be voiced and it needs to come up and it needs to be heard, and there needs to be like a relationship with like worry. So that and sometimes there's like, I need to have a bit of a boundary with this thought pattern that's creating this emotion, because it's some thoughts make thoughts, some thoughts make action, right? And these thoughts that are making thoughts that are causing a nervous system response, a spiral. Sometimes we do need to go, oh, enough, no more. And if that's just for a minute or 2 minutes to break it, great.
Sometimes that's
because it's just thoughts. They're often not true.
Right.
And our brain is wired with that negativity bias. So we're going to be thinking worst case scenario. It's going to be giving us negativity. It's going to be that motherfucker. I forgot. I can that
you do whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay. So that guy's coming back. He's coming for my family.
Yeah.
And then we're thinking, and it's not even happening.
Right.
And then we go, these thoughts are true. And now I've got this anxiety and I'm worried and I'm pissed off again. And so sometimes it's thoughts that we need to go like, whoa. In meditation, there's like watching them go by, like clouds in the sky, these thoughts. There's sometimes like, let me be in relationship with them. And sometimes it's got to be like, enough.
Done with you.
That thought's really complete. I got the job done. That's a nice thing. A lot of people I work with, we learn how to say like, especially ruminate, like I got that job done. That thing that happened with that person, you got the job done. You set the boundary. You worked it out. It's done. Now, if he comes back, if something happens again, you'll have resource to respond, but you won't be more prepared by ruminating on it.
True. Yeah.
So what would it be if it was complete?
You asking me that?
Yeah, I mean, what would it be for you if it was just what was done got done and that part's complete?
Yeah. I don't know how to answer that.
I don't either. It's not something that can be answered in seconds. It's something to consider when we're working with thoughts that are creating fight-flight responses. Or we're working with emotions that are triggering fight-flight responses. So you had asked me what are some exercises.
Yeah.
We really went
That's
on
all right.
another direction. Anytime we can engage our sensory system. If it's if we're like this, doing this thing, we're about to flip our lid.
Sure.
That's going to be a little bit different. If we're just if we're sitting with like rumination, and we need to like kind of snap out of some of the stuff, our sensory system is really cool to engage. So if I said to you right now, imagine an orange and like the citric acid of the orange and the flavor of the orange and the taste of the orange, and really let yourself be with that orange and what it's like, it like changes things, right?
It does.
Yeah.
I felt it. I could feel it. Like, yeah.
I know. And all of a sudden I'm like, my mouth's so dry. I really want that orange. There's little things like that we can do. Mantras or songs that come back to us. We can remember a poem or like a mantra that we could say to ourselves. When I start to get that feeling, like in my toes and finger, like that float, like, I'm getting that rise, that rubby thing. Again, it's not to avoid it, but if I know it's coming from something that's done and complete, sometimes I'll move to this, and it's so wild. It's Tony, please come down, help me find what's lost and can't be found, which, I grew up Catholic. So that's like this thing that comes out of nowhere.
St. Anthony.
Yeah. And it's right back to, and it's like what I've lost is a sense of self. So it's a reminder to me to like come back to this. Okay. Yeah. Take a break. So those are wiggle your toes always. If you're starting to feel the rise and then tense, like, are you in your feet? Be where your feet are. Be where your feet are.
Yeah. Ground yourself.
Yeah. Those are some ideas, right?
Cool. The traveler sat back, his breath still catching up with him. His hands ached from gripping the oar. His pulse thrummed in his ears. It had all happened so fast. One moment he was safe, the next, he was in the water, his body reacting before his mind had a say. And maybe that was okay. He hadn't chose to panic. He hadn't decided to fight. His body had done what it was built to do, keep him alive. Now the moment had passed, he was safe. With a final glance at the horizon, he kept on moving toward it.